Hello and welcome to another round of Championship Predictions from the On Football Podcast. I'm Craig Savage, and with me, as always, is Mr. Daniel Cody. Let's have a quick recap of what we've been doing for the last week or so in the Championship. Starting off with last midweek, one perfect score overall, and that was my 1-0 victory for Cardiff against Barnsley. Daniel Cody got the solid point for that Cardiff game, so that was 5-1 to me. Over the weekend, there weren't many games because of the FA Cup fourth round. 2 points each, really. And there's the first couple of games, Sheffield United and Blackpool both winning. So let's start off with the midweek action. It's a full set of fixtures. Let's start off with Coventry City versus Blackpool. Coventry playing the FA Cup. They lost 2-1 to Southampton. And Blackpool with a 3-1 victory at home to Bristol City.
Yeah, they were really comfortable. I mean, we'll get to Bristol City later, but Blackpool looked good going forward. I mean, Josh Bowler, I said this earlier on in a live stream, I think he's going to get picked up in the summer. He's playing so well this season. But look, after a little dodgy run, Blackpool have come back to form. They're actually only 1 point off the top half now, or one place off the top half. They're 5 points off the playoffs. They were so ruthless. They only had 5 shots on target and took them. Coventry put up a decent display in the FA Cup against Southampton. It looked for a little while like they might do it. But it is back-to-back defeats for them now in all competition, and they need to bounce back because this is now 12th v 13th, which after Coventry's start is a bit disappointing. I'm going to trust them to find their home form. I'm going to trust them to get a win. I think they'll bounce back with a 2-1 victory. I think it's going to be a really good game, this.
I'm going to have to disagree. Blackpool on the road do spring up a surprise result here and there, and obviously last away game, they drew 1-1 with Fulham. Yeah. So they can turn it on when it really matters. And obviously, yes, Coventry away is another tough game, and Coventry's form lately has been here a bit hit and miss. So obviously they've had extra time as well over the weekend. So obviously an extra half an hour of ache for the players. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. I think Coventry will concede first, but they'll score later on. But it won't be a vintage performance by them. Right, next up, it's Derby County versus Hull City at Pride Park. Derby, they lost 2-0 to Huddersfield last midweek. Hull lost to Preston, the first defeat for Charlotte Avalozzi and the new owner.
Yeah, and it was a pretty even game, but Preston had that cutting edge, which we've talked about a lot with Hull this season. Derby, I think they really needed the week off, to be honest. They've had a few poor results. They've started to creak a bit defensively. I do worry about them at the back now, having lost Jagielka with Stearman suspended. What's going to happen back there in the next game? There's a real deficit at the back, and this is where it just starts to run a little bit too thin. There's still the problems off the pitch with what will and won't happen with the takeover. I definitely don't see Derby getting more than a draw. But Hull's lack of quality in front of goal at times might be able to help them. I'm still going to go for Hull, though. I'm going to go 1-0 to Hull. I think it will be a very poor game. But I think Hull will nick it on the strength of having a few more players available.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say 1-0 to Hull, which makes my prediction a little bit harder. I could either be 0-0 or 2-1 Hull. Hull, obviously, they'll be disappointed to not get anything out of the Preston game. For me, I'm going to sneak a Hull win as well. I'm going to go 2-1. Right, next up, Craven Cottage is your London derby. It is Fulham versus Millwall. Fulham lost 4-1 to Manchester City in the FA Cup. Millwall didn't play at the weekend, but drew 0-0 with Preston. And we spoke about Preston last from the weekend action. It was pretty dire.
It was pretty dire, yeah. It was a poor game. Obviously, the penalty save was the only real incident of that match. Fulham, I don't know. Look, they scored early against City. There was a lot of deadline day talk about Fabio Carvalho potentially going to Liverpool. There's been a lot of unsettling stuff there in the last week or two. They were held by Blackpool. They struggled against City, but then most teams will. The problem with Fulham at the moment is they've got those teams sort of 5, 6, 7 points behind them. They don't want it to get any closer than that. Again, I know this is quite defensive at the start. I don't think this is going to be a vintage game. I think it's going to be a really poor one. I think it's going to be low scoring. Because Fulham, 2 games in a row, they've scored 1. Millwall kept a clean sheet the last 2. 1-0 Fulham, just.
I'm going to go 2-1 Fulham because Millwall do have a tendency to spoil in the party at times. They beat West Brom last week, and also they picked up a point against Preston. So 4 points out of the last 6 is a reasonable return. They can spoil the party. I think Fulham will just have enough quality in them at Craven Cottage. So I'm going to go 2-1 to Fulham. Right, next up, Kenilworth Road. It is Luton Town versus Barnsley. Both these teams were in FA Cup action over the weekend. Luton won 3-0 at Cambridge. Barnsley lost 1-0 to Huddersfield Town. This is a perfect opportunity for Luton to potentially could be another 3 points on the way, but don't get complacent.
No, and this is the sort of game that we would list as a championship banana skin, isn't it? Barnsley are losing every game. I think the manager set a new record in terms of league games for the most without a win when starting in the job. Luton, 3 clean sheets in a row, rotated heavily against Cambridge, so a lot of players will have got the rest. Adebayo's had a 3-game rest now. I'd imagine he'll be back, and I actually think it hinges on him. If he's not fit, Barnsley have been better defensively the last 3 games, only letting 1 in each of them. That includes Huddersfield and Bournemouth, who have been very good sides going forward this year. So if Adebayo doesn't play, I could see this sneaking into a 0-0. I really could. And I don't want to go low scoring again, but I'm going to trust Adebayo's fit. It's going to be 1-0 to the Luton. I don't know the last time we've kept 4 clean sheets in a row, so it might be a stupid prediction, but I'm going to go 1-0.
No, I think Luton will win this game 2-0. I don't think it really matters if Adebayo's not playing up, because I feel like Cornick coming back into the side now has helped as well. Him scoring last Tuesday against Swansea does give a big confidence boost. Cameron Jerome's playing well. Danny Hilton has worked his socks off the last two games. Musquet scoring again, that will give him a confidence boost. Mendes Gomez scoring as well over the weekend, that will give him a confidence boost. So the attacking front is getting there again. A good start for Jed Steering goal, despite James Shea had the rest. So it was pretty promising signs for Luton, considering they had to play Saturday, Tuesday since the start of January. So it has been a very good month since the return for Luton Town. Barnsley, obviously, the confidence is shot. Yes, they are not conceding many now, but they still can't score, which is very, very worrying. I still think Luton will win this game by 2-0. Right, next up, Stoke City versus Swansea City. That was a lot better from Swansea.
Yeah, it was. And they played most of the second half with 10 men, by the way. So it was a really good result. Good to see Obafemi on the score sheet. He's a young player with a lot of potential, and I think he'll potentially reach it at Swansea. They play like that. But it was a very different Swansea performance. They had less than half the possession. They had less than a fifth of the shots. They played very sort of cautiously and on the counter-attack at times. And I think that is maybe Swansea learning a lesson. I don't know if they're forced into it by Blackburn, perhaps, but it did look like they'd learned a lesson from the previous games, such as the Luton one, where they'd had nearly 80% or over 70% of the ball, and not created a huge amount. So really good to see them playing a different way. I think that was more pleasing than just the result. Stoke, comfortable win against Wigan in the Cup. They're doing okay, but they've had 3 games without a win in the league. I'd fancy them to get back to winning ways in this one, because Swansea on the road this season, they haven't been great. They've only won 3 games out of 14. They're scoring less than a goal a game. I feel like I'm being negative this midweek. I'm going for all low-scoring games. I'm going to go for 2-0 to Stoke, just because I don't want every team to score 1 or nothing, but it could easily be lower.
I think it's negative. We always said midweek games are always tight, bar the couple of 7-0s that Fulham like to do. But yeah, I think this will be a tight game, to be honest. I'm not going for either side to win. Obviously, Stoke's form is a bit ropey. Good confidence booster with a 2-0 win against Wigan. Obviously, Wigan are doing well in League One. I think they're currently second at the time. Swansea, I said that was a confidence boost for them, because I said they were boring last Tuesday and they weren't the Swansea that people probably would have expected. I think maybe Russell Martin might have learned this lesson, because there was a lot of negativity after that Luton game on Tuesday. So good confidence boost. It'd be a point each, 1-1. Next up, Blackburn Rovers versus Nottingham Forest is probably my pick of the midweek action. Blackburn lost to Swansea, I've just mentioned. Nottingham Forest are in the Cup at the time of recording, haven't played in the Cup because they're playing Leicester in a bit. Blackburn lost. It's a big month for them, considering the run of fixtures. Not the ideal start.
Not the ideal start. They didn't get the result, but there was encouragement still. They had tons of chances. Obviously, Ben Brereton Diaz started on the bench. They didn't take a lot of chances. They didn't hit the target much. Those sorts of games, they're going to be one-offs for Blackburn. The Luton game was different. They had no attacking players left. They were playing with a centre-half up front by the end. The Borough game, they snuck a 1-0 victory, and that Swansea game could have easily been the same. It's just the fact they're letting a poor goal, and They didn't have the quality in front of goal that we'd normally expect. I would expect that to bounce back. Forest, there's going to be so much on that Leicester game today. They're going to have to play first team players. It's a big East Midlands derby. You're then recovering in 3 days. So it is going to depend partly on the result. They had a really disappointing league display against Cardiff last time out as well. We've got to mention that. So maybe there are just a couple of negatives creeping in. The honeymoon can't last forever. They're only 2 points off the playoffs. And both of these teams are now in an unexpected pressure situation. Since Blackburn have been second, they haven't won a game. Forest are now expected to almost reach the playoffs and have started to stutter a bit. And with other managerial changes around them, I'd be a little concerned. I actually think this game's going to be a real disappointment. I don't think it's going to be the game of the week at all. But it'll still have a couple of goals. One apiece, Championship's favourite scoreline.
It resorts to a Championship's favourite scoreline, but I'm not going to obviously go for that because you just said it. I'm going to go for a Forest win. Obviously, Blackburn's last 2 games were tough. Luton away and Swansea away, obviously 2 tough trips in different styles of football. And obviously, they've only picked up 1 point in 6. So they might start the panic. And considering the rest of their fixtures for the month, West Brom away, on new manager Steve Bruce, Millwall home, okay, but then Sheffield United away, who've been back on really good form, and QPR home. It's a very tough month, and they really, obviously, if they want to be contenders to be up there, they have to start picking up wins rather than the odd draw or defeat. I don't think they're going to win this game, I'll be honest. I think Forest will have enough. I'm going to go 2-1 to them. Right, next up, it is Bournemouth versus Birmingham. Bournemouth are playing the FA Cup. By the time we record, this hasn't even happened yet, so we don't know. So let's say Bournemouth won. I'm joking. Yeah, Bournemouth, go Bournemouth. No, Birmingham played Sheffield United on Friday night, lost 2-1. Let's start with Bournemouth. Transfer deadline day. Have they panicked?
It's hard to suggest otherwise, isn't it? Because 5 signings in a day. I know a couple of them were linked quite heavily beforehand, so I always expected there to be a bit of business. But 5 players, a couple of which came pretty left field, it just seems like a really big gamble. And I know they probably are budget-wise still favourite for second. If they don't get it, it's going to be a big problem though, because in the summer they'll have to sell to balance the books because they must be committing a lot of money to that. I hope, obviously, from a selfish point of view, I haven't watched Bournemouth live in the 3rd round, that they do get a result against Bournemouth tonight, but I would expect Bournemouth to prevail. I'd expect them to be able to rotate the squad a bit. So a week and a half after a just about comfortable victory over Barnsley, I would expect them to be back to some sort of decent form. It's just whether they can integrate those new boys. Birmingham, I'm not going to go into it too much, but there was a large shade of controversy surrounding the winning goal with an offside in the build-up, but there was still a passage of play where the defending should have been sorted towards the end. And they're a club at the moment that are probably going to be happy to be away from home, given all the fan protests, some of which taking place during the game, makes it very hard when you're playing. I know there's the odd exception, but largely the track record suggests if there's problems off the pitch, it's normally followed by problems on it. It's 3 without a win. Defensive problems for Birmingham. We mentioned it last time. They've conceded another 2 now. But I think they'll be happy to be on the road. I think they'll be better, but I think they'll lose. I'm going to go for Bournemouth to win by 2-1.
Yeah, Bournemouth, obviously, the 5 sides, I do think it's a panic move. Obviously, you've got the Premier League parachute payment. That does make a hell of a difference. I think they have panicked. I don't care what anyone else says. They have panicked because they're good signings. Don't get me wrong. They're good signings. But of course, you can afford to pay for these signings. Like Kiefer Moore and Nat Phillips on loan and Dembele, Cantwell on loan. It's going to be hard because they've got players in those positions that are really good, like Jaden Anthony and Ryan Christie. All that stuff. So it'd be very hard to fit all these players, especially like Kiefer Moore with Dominic Solanke up top as well. I don't know. That's Scotty Parker's problem, not mine. I don't do it on Football Manager. Birmingham, on the other hand, obviously, yeah, the masks, it's not really ideal. It's just so many problems at Birmingham, and it's starting to creep onto the pitch. Lyle Taylor seems to be a good sign. He's obviously got 2 and 2 now, but they concede straight away. And that just hinders it a lot more. You know, that sort of thing doesn't really help. I don't care about the offside, whether it's offside or not. They still got to defend it. They didn't really do that. But Bournemouth are going to win 2-0 for me on that one. Right, next up is probably the game I am not looking forward to the most. It is Bristol City versus Reading at Ashton Gate. Bristol City got battered 3-1 at Blackpool. Reading didn't play. Last time they played, they got battered 4-0 at QPR.
Yeah, well, you say that this is the game you're not looking forward to, but
I'm not looking forward to it.
I know, but everything would suggest that this game is going to be goals galore. Who knows what the score will be? And I'm sure there won't be a lot of great football, but you would expect defensive errors. Bristol City, look, we saw it against Luton. They produced exactly the same against Blackpool. They had a good amount of the ball. They had a good amount of the ball in the middle and attacking third, but do not have that cutting edge. I know Nahuel's got another goal, but they just don't create consistent chances. You don't feel they're going to score regularly. And at the back, they're so bad. I've never seen a Nigel Pearson team that's so bad defensively, from set pieces, from wide areas in open play, from cutting passes through the middle. They look like they can be exposed in any area of the pitch, and it's really bizarre. The issue, or perhaps the positive for Bristol City, is that Reading are even worse. I know they've got some of their senior defenders back now, but we're talking 2 4s in a row, 2 2s before that, and then the 7 against Fulham and the defeat to Kidderminster. It's been a horrible January. I'll be honest, I'm amazed we haven't done a Reading manager special this week, because as much as I don't think it's his fault, I thought he would be the man that was scapegoated now, because they've got to try and change something. I honestly think Reading at this rate are going to go down. I think they'll save Peterborough by default. I don't have a clue what to predict for this game, but there's going to be goals. I'm going for, don't call me a lunatic, Bristol City 4, Reading 2, because why not? It could be anything.
Well, reading the Twitter comments on this, it could be a 7-0, an 8-0. Yeah. You're going for 4-2. I'm going the complete opposite way of a 0-0 draw.
You like doing this in the games where there's supposed to be goals, aren't you?
Yeah, it probably be the first goal of the night. It really wouldn't surprise me. Reading can't score for Toffee. Bristol City really can't score for Toffee. Well, don't really take chances. So how's this going to work for either side? If it is a result in the game for either side, I do expect us to do a managerial special after that.
I agree.
I really do. Well, we'll have to wait and see. But I'm going to go for a goalless draw. Right, next up, it's Cardiff versus Peterborough at the Cardiff City Stadium. Cardiff are currently playing Liverpool in the Cup. At the time of recording, it was 0-0 after 50 minutes. Peterborough beat QPR in the Cup as well. So that's a very good result for them. Maybe there was probably changes for QPR, but win's a win.
It was. And my favourite football manager player and one of the best young players in the EFL up front, in my opinion, came back and scored a fantastic goal. Brilliant first-time finish from Ricky J. Jones. He is a player who's got buckets of potential. And Peterborough, look, we've talked about this seriously all season. They're never going to be the strongest defensive side, particularly away from home, where they've scored 38 goals, which is conceded 38 goals, which is just ridiculous. They have to outscore teams. And with now Jack Marriott back to fitness, with Ricky J. Jones coming back, with Johnson Clark-Harris in the team, with their attacking midfielders about to, they're a team that has got the ability now to outscore people. They're, of course, going to be reliant on home results a lot. But this is one of those few away games, like the only one they won earlier in the season at Hull, where they've got a chance to get a result. Cardiff are looking a bit better. They beat Forest in a really good performance, kept a clean sheet against Barnsley, which was more important than anything else. And the first half, they contained Liverpool pretty well, largely, in the game that we've been watching. So I think Cardiff are a stronger opposition now. I'm going to go for a draw, though. I'm going to go for a Championship's favourite scoreline. I'm sure you won't be. But I think Peterborough, this is one of their chances to get a point. And if Reading lose, as I predict, that'll be very close for the weekend.
I think this could be one of the rare opportunities. I'm going to give Peterborough an away win.
I did not expect that.
I need a wild card in this one. I'm going to go Peterborough to sneak this one 1-0. I just think the way they're playing against Liverpool at the moment, they're putting an almighty shift in, and I worry about that. Might reflect onto the game on Wednesday. Yeah. Might be a bit tired. I could see Peterborough really sneaking this one by the odd goal. Right, next up at Deep Dale is Preston North End versus Huddersfield. These two teams are pretty much on good form. Preston beating Hull 1-0. Huddersfield beat Barnsley in the Cup. And then before that, they beat Derby 2-0. So these two teams are in pretty good form. This could potentially be the game of midweek.
Yeah, I think the only thing that stops it being a game midweek is both sides are very good defensively at the moment. 2 clean sheets in a row for both of them. I know Huddersfield were against Barnsley and Derby, who aren't the most aggressive sides going forward. I think that would be fair to say. And probably the same for Preston against Millwall and Hull. However, both of these sides are doing pretty well. And Ryan Lowe is starting to make an impact at Preston. It's got to be said. They're only 4 points off the playoffs. We did see something similar last year when Valerian Ismail came in at Barnsley, and they were that side that just flew up the league. We've got it this year with Forest. We've got it with Preston now as well. I wouldn't write them off just yet. I don't think they're strong enough as a squad, but Cameron Archer is looking one hell of a signing. Obviously played really well in his debut, nicked the winner against Hull, has shown some individual magic, that little bit of class that they haven't had previously. Huddersfield, I keep saying it, they're just really solid. I expected them to drop off by now. I completely hold my hands up and say fair play. I wasn't convinced by the head coach last season. They stuck with him and they've been rewarded for stability. They're up in 5th place in the league. I know they've played a couple of extra games, but I'd rather have the points on the board. And they look a fabulous side. They've got a top 6 record away from home and at home. They've only lost 5 of their 15 games on the road. I have to go for a draw in this game. No, I'm not. I think Huddersfield might nick it, I'm going to go 2-1 to Huddersfield.
I'm quite glad you said you changed your mind because I'm going to go for 1-1 in this game. Obviously, Ryan Lowe's done a brilliant job since he's taken over. Huddersfield have been superb, in my opinion. I think you have to give them a lot of credit. Yeah. Probably one of the most underrated team in this league. Probably deserve a lot more credit than they probably should. Probably are getting. I can't decide between these two teams. I really can't. So that's why I'm going to go for a draw. So 1-1 in that game. Right, 2 to go. QPR versus Middlesbrough, 4th versus 7th. QPR lost 2-0 in the cup. Middlesbrough beat Manchester United on penalties. Yeah, obviously these two teams are in good form. Another potential good game to watch. Do you see it that way?
I don't know, actually. I think we're benefited by the fact that Middlesbrough played on Friday night, because I think that would have had an impact if that had been a weekend game. I think QPR, it probably isn't a disaster to be out of the cup, albeit they played a relatively strong team and still lost pretty comfortably. I think they'll be okay and happy with that. Their aim is to make sure they're in the top 6 at the end of the season. They've battered Reading before it. Defensively, they've been really good in the league, and Borough have started to look like a very good side under Chris Wilder. So it's going to be another one that's really tight. There's actually not really many bankers at all this midweek, I don't think. So that's probably why we've got such tight scorelines. QPR are a top 6 team at home, and Middlesbrough, for all their quality, the large chunk of their wins have come away at home. So on the road, only won 4 of their 13 games, and normally less than a goal scored and conceded per game. So I'm going to go QPR to win this game. I think they'll bounce back. I think it might be a rare off night for Borough, given the events of Friday night. 120 minutes in the tank. I'm going 2-0 QPR.
I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw in this game. So these two teams do have obviously quality to score, but these two teams are quite tight as well defensively. And why have I gone for a 2-2 if I said both these two teams are tight defensively?
It is a contradiction.
It's a contradiction, but I'm going to go for it. I expect goals. I really do expect goals. I think it's going to be very late on as well, these a 2-2 draw as well. So I got real no justification on it. Obviously, Borough played well against Man United. Well, they survived the first half against Manchester United. Man United should have really been out of sight. Yeah. That's Man United's fault rather than Middlesbrough. And yeah, they got the break with a goal. Forget your letter of the law rubbish. It's handball. I'm sorry, but they took advantage of it. Played well. To be fair, they had some chances near the end, and obviously won on penalties. Yeah, 2-2 for me. And the final game, it is Sheffield United versus West Bromwich Albion at Bramall Lane. Steve Bruce, the new head coach of West Bromwich Albion. We kind of correctly predicted that in our West Brom video. Check that out on the eye above. Sheffield United on good form. Beat Birmingham 2-1. But is there a new manager bounce on the horizon?
Well, this is the question, isn't it? Is bar Barnsley, we've almost exclusively seen new manager bounces this year. And for all that Sheffield United are in good form the last 3 games, their last 2 wins were away from home, though, and then at home to a depleted Luton. They've actually, Sheffield United, surprisingly to many, got the 5th worst home record in the Championship. So they aren't a side that have been great at home most of the year. I accept the majority of that was before under Jokanovic. West Brom have been mid-table on the road. They've been poor away at Millwall, at home to Preston, away at QPR. But Steve Bruce is in charge, and for whatever anyone says about him and the Newcastle stint, he is the most successful Championship manager at getting promotion. So for him, I think it's the right time. I think it's a good appointment. And I think the Heckingbottom bounce has to end soon or we're going to look ridiculous. So I'm going to go for a West Brom win. I think this is going to be a big one. I'm going to go for, everyone thinks this is going to be like a 1-0 or a 0-0. I'm going 3-1 West Brom. Let's finish on a high. The new manager bounces alive and kicking, Craig.
This is probably the toughest one I've had to predict, because Sheffield United weren't great for a good 50 minutes against Birmingham. It was a crap first half, and he came from behind to win the game. West Brom, Steve Bruce. that's the only thing. As you said, my successful championship manager, I think. I'm going to go, I don't know now. I'm going to go 2-0. I'm going to go 2-0 to West Brom. Let's have a quick recap what we just predicted for this midweek's action. And of all the 12 games I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to stick to one game, Bristol City versus Reading. Cody's going to go for the expansive 4-2 win. I'm going to go for a boring 0-0 draw. And those are our predictions for this midweek's action in the Championship. Do you agree with us or disagree with us? Let us know in the comments and give us your prediction. Let us know. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Honest Football Podcast, and you can follow us on Twitter at HonestFootball3. And we'll see you next time.